The headlines are stark and scary. So are the images. Gaza facing famine and fighting. Israel-Hamas war, the specter of famine. Fears of famine grow in Gaza. Many, many, many scary images. How about some facts? On October 7th, 2023, Hamas government of Gaza launched a war against Israel. They murdered 1,200 people. They burned children alive. They burned their parents alive. They raped and killed Israeli women. And they had a public relations plan ready to go in the UN to deny after the fact these facts that were documented by hundreds of witnesses who survived these assaults. But back to the topic of famine in Gaza. There has been warnings of famine in Gaza since October 8th, when Israel announced that they were going to stop the transfer of water, electricity, and food supplies into Gaza Strip for the duration of the war. Well, that announcement was the public relations blunder. But the world immediately went against Israel, even as our blood was not even dry on the ground. They said we have to supply electricity to Gaza. Were the Allies forced in World War II to supply electricity to Hitler while they were at war with him and Germany? Were they required to provide food so Germans wouldn't starve? They weren't even required to not bomb cities. There's 100,000 dead bodies burned to death in Dresden, Germany by British bombers. But what about the facts in this case, in this horrible war? And every civilian death is unnecessary, but every civilian death in Israel or in Gaza is the responsibility of the Hamas government of Israel. But let's look at the facts. According to the United Nations and Israeli sources and the Gaza Ministry of Transportation, number of trucks allowed into Gaza on a daily basis to supply the food needs of Gaza in September of 2023. 75 trucks a day. How many trucks can Israel inspect at the Rafah crossing? 250 trucks a day. How many trucks can Israel process and inspect for weapons? 250 trucks a day. It's 500 trucks a day. Almost 10 times the number of trucks are coming into Gaza as is necessary to feed the population. So what's really going on there? Well, a lot of the food is being stolen by thugs, gangs, and Hamas remnants after it gets in there. That's a fact. Cold hard reality. If a single person starves to death in Gaza, God forbid, that is the responsibility of those who steal the food, those who started the war, and those who perpetuate the lies. Take a look at the pictures, do a Google images search, the famine in Gaza. Take those images and put them into a search engine that checks the metadata of the photos. Half the photos I looked at for this opinion video shot in Syria, 5 years old. Let's point out another interesting fact in the Israel-Gaza war. The population of Gaza has been used the entire time as human shields, so that when we kill a combatant who is not wearing a uniform, who is hidden as a civilian with a Kalashnikov rifle, AK-47 or whatever, when that happens, civilians often are in the crossfire and die. Again, that's tragic. But who's responsible? The people who are using the human shields or the people who are shooting at the enemy soldiers who are in armed combat against Israel. Israel's responsibility under international law is to provide food and medical supplies into Gaza. That is clearly happening. There are no delays at either checkpoint moving into Gaza. There are 10 times the number of trucks allowed in every day than is necessary for the basic needs of the population. Israel is responsible to provide security for a food distribution system, and arguably that effort could be improved. But what's disrupting the food supplies? A 500-kilometer tunnel system, which is longer than the New York City subway system. Hamas fighters pop up in Al Shifa Hospital again, 6 months after the start of the war, because Hamas's strategy is to starve people to death, and they want to make sure it's on camera and television. So they're trying to restore. They're demanding restoration of internet service in Gaza because they want it documented. Hamas's strategy is to have people starve to death on television, on live feed internet. That is their war strategy. Israel has kept its responsibilities to the letter under international law. When a crisis began to break out several weeks ago about the security of trucks going into Gaza, Israel provided checkpoints, security, and escorts to trucks to get them into major distribution centers. So don't believe the lies, the anti-Semitic lies, the anti-Israel lies, the anti-Zionist lies. They're not true. Check your facts. I have an array of photos in front of me right now from Google Images, and over half these photos do not check out. They're either shot in Syria, where 500,000 people were killed in the civil war several years ago by the government. Was there any objection to the UN? Was there a resolution at the UN? No. Yet 2 Mondays ago, Joe Biden's administration hung Israel out to dry by allowing a resolution to pass the UN demanding immediate ceasefire that demanded the release of the hostages, but didn't do what earlier demands the United States and Israel were, which were supposedly no ceasefire until all hostages are released. There's a war going on in Gaza, and Israel will pursue it until its final moments, until every Hamas member surrenders. Hamas members, if you care about your people, come out with your hands up. Drop your guns. Show us you want peace. Show us you want to live with us. Show us the war was a mistake. And admit your mistake. And admit your intention, which was to rape and murder and eliminate every Jew in Israel if you had the chance. Come on, Hamas. What are you waiting for? There's plenty of food. Why are you stopping it? Why are you starving your people, Hamas? Stick with the facts. Fact is, 75 trucks a day is what it takes to sustain Gaza. 500 trucks a day are inspected for weapons and permitted into Gaza every day. Food is piling up in warehouses because there's no distribution system in place. And that is the problem in Gaza. Remember who started the war? Remember who violated human rights? And remember who the good guys are. That's the IDF and the Israeli forces. My recently married daughter has her husband, who was inducted into the IDF on April 8th, or will be inducted on April 8th. And his two brothers are already in the IDF, one of which spent 3 months fighting in Gaza. Israel is on the side of right and is the moral side, and is doing everything humanly possible to prevent starvation deaths in Gaza. These are the facts.